Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Dream Life Loading Podcast, Season 2, Episode 33. I'm your co host, Sky.
And I'm your co-host, Susan. How are you today, Sky?
I'm happy to be back. It was so funny that an episode about change management, we ended up having to move around our recording date and our upload date and all the things. We both said, when this occurrence all happened, it was like, of course it's going to happen on this week. It's just too funny. But it actually worked out on my end too, because I don't know if I'm sick or what's going on, but I have not been feeling well. So feeling better today. So I feel like the universe was on our side for all the reasons. So I'm feeling better today. I won't say I'm feeling good, but I am happy to be back. And we haven't we've been texting all week, but we didn't talk on our normal recording day because of your internet. So it's been a while since we've been face to face. So it's good to see you.
Yeah. Yeah, we had like a little literal internet blackout where we live, like a handful of surrounding towns. We all just lost Wi-Fi, which makes working from home really tiring and or it makes it impossible actually. But then I was in office for 2 days in a row and we had Chris called it an episode. I called it a moment. We had a hot girl cry last night because I was just done. I was so tired. I was exhausted. I was mad. I was sad. I was all the things. Like I just needed a hot shower and to just literally bawl my eyes out. And then I was ready to take on today.
Oh, sometimes that happens. Like sometimes you just need to let yourself feel the feels and just get it out. And I know if you don't have time to take a bath, like honestly, sometimes just laying on the ground of the shower and letting the water fall on you while you're crying and it's like I'm going to be miserable and I don't want anyone to tell me otherwise. Like you need to have those moments.
Our shower has built-in chairs, which makes the crying in the shower so much more enjoyable. He was like,
Oh
I
my
told him out
God.
like our bathroom and our bedroom, they're not connected, but they're side by side. So like he could hear the situation. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yep." And he's like, "What was that about?" And I was like, "I just needed a moment to cry." And he was like, "That was more like 30 minutes." I was like, "Yep." And that's what I needed. And I did. I felt better after, but it
Yep.
was just it had been a long couple days. I think just my routine being off of going in office 2 days, my Monday was non-existent because we had the holiday.
Yep.
It was just lots of things were out of my control, but I held it together at work and I was really productive. So I was able to come home and really just like let loose.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so funny the way these things align. Like we booked these episodes out so far in advance at this point. So the fact that it's so relevant is almost laughable. But it's this was change and obviously you have much bigger changes coming, but for the sake of this episode, this change happened. You had a different work week routine anyways because of Monday being off and then the internet's out. So now you have to go into office on days that you weren't supposed to and you're exhausted and it's different and your routine's all over the place. So I feel like it could not be more relevant to go into all of these steps, but the fact that the number one thing you did was you kept it together for the moments that you knew you absolutely had to, and then you let yourself fall apart after the fact, and it helped. And that was something I had written down with change management. Like, get through it, but don't forget to let yourself grieve the change. Like, it is okay to break down, obviously, in the sense of a bigger change, like a move or something like that. You have to let yourself grieve the fact that things are changing and it's okay to acknowledge that. And in the smaller sense of things, that's exactly what you did in your hot girl shower cry. And I think it was obviously not a good thing, but in a way, I think it was the perfect thing you could do for yourself in that moment.
It was exactly what I needed. And just being able to identify that and then like literally honor it and not
Yeah.
because then I would have had all that pent up energy that I know I would have brought in today. I still brought some of it into today. I'm at that point in this pregnancy, I'm uncomfortable. So when I'm sitting at work, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my chair, my just the way my desk is set up. She like floats into my ribs and then I cannot breathe. Like at one point yesterday, the person sitting in the desk next to me was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yep, I literally just cannot like breathe. I can't get air." So it's and then she's like this, like she has all of her limbs spread out and I'm just uncomfortable. And it's frustrating to not feel good. And then when you move, just I don't want to sit here and complain, but it's just
Yeah.
we're in the home stretch. We're almost
Again,
done.
I think complaining has to be a part of it. I don't even know where I wrote this down. But complaining has to be a part of it because if you're like, I'm fine, everything's good, like I'm having a baby, I can't complain, like I'm getting everything I want. It's like, okay, that's awesome, but when are you going to actually acknowledge how you're actually feeling? Like it's gonna come out one way or another. So might as well get it out now and feel the way you actually feel so that when you are having those moments, which are most of the time that you're really, really, really happy and excited, you can feel those and not be like, well, I can't be excited because I'm so miserable because I'm uncomfortable. Like feel the things when they come in so that you can happily feel the good things. And I don't know if that made sense, but I think you know what I'm
Hell,
trying
it
to
did.
say. It's
So when
important. Get
I
it
sat
out.
down, yeah, absolutely. When I sat down to do my research for this, I was actually, I don't know if you found the same thing, but maybe it's just because of my current search history. But change management is actually the primary use of it is for top level organizational change in the business world. And I was
Yes.
like, this is not what I was expecting to find. But I still did all the research on exactly that like vein of it. And I was like, this is all so applicable to ourselves. Like if we're going through change or whatever, like this is essentially a toolbox of
Yep.
things everyone can use and apply, whether it's business, personal, emotional, like all the things.
Yep.
I didn't know that there are two types of change. So there's adaptive change, which is small, incremental, and you adopt for larger change over time. So I feel like this is like habits, routines, that sort of thing. And then there's transformational change, which is large scale and the scope is bigger and it's going to make an immediate major shift in multiple areas. So that feels like a move, a baby, a wedding, like anything like that. Like big life events are transformational, where anything you're adopting in your everyday life is adaptive
And
change.
almost like a permanent change. That second one feels like adaptive change to me seems like, well, my routine's changing, but 2 weeks from now it'll go back, or even like a year
Yeah.
from now it'll go back. But that second, what was the name of the second one?
Transformational change.
Transformational. It feels a little bit more permanent. Like for perfect example, like when I moved here, it was like, okay, like even if we move, if not if, when we move back to the States, but it's like things are always going to be different. Obviously,
Mhm.
you having a child, this is a permanent change. So I think we can talk on both types of these changes here, and I think there's some strategies that go into both, but then I think there's some that are only going to work for adaptive change versus transformational change.
Yeah. And I think that there's like even a move, because like you moving from Italy to the States is so different from me moving from my apartment to my house across the same town. Like my geographic location isn't really changing, but the move itself and all the responsibility that
Yes.
comes with going from an apartment to a house, like it's just so crazy because that I feel like that move for us was more adaptive, where your move is going to be transformational.
For
Or
sure. But I even think I agree with you, but I think you could argue that moving from your apartment to your house was transformational in a lot of ways. So I think it's interesting, and like we've moved apartments here from one apartment to the other, which I felt was very adaptive, like, very close proximity, but like you're paying a mortgage now versus the apartment, it was just rent. So like there's a lot of these bigger changes, even though it looks like, oh, we just moved down the road. Like, so I feel like that perspective alone could honestly be a tool in going through change management. Like, okay, to you, this might seem like, oh, well, we're just moving down the street, or it might seem like the biggest thing in the world. But if you need that change of perspective, kind of take a step back and be like, okay, what is this actually? How can I kind of look at this as a bigger lens, or maybe dive in and look at one specific part of it to kind of allow yourself to adapt to the changes around you.
and honestly, being able to identify and say, okay, like this change is adaptive to me or this change is transformational to me, that can signify to you how much energy you're going to put into like managing that change.
Yes. Yep. I had researched, so I had done the same thing. I was looking up change management, change management, and it was all like very like business professional. And I was like, all right, this isn't quite where I want to be. So I kind of had to dig a little bit, but I found the Kubler-Ross change curve. Did you see this?
Was it like this?
Yes. So it's the 5 stages of change, but there were 7 on it, but 2 were grayed out. I'm like, okay, I see what we're doing here. So it was like the 5 stages of change. The first one that doesn't even count is shock. And then denial, frustration, depression, experiment, decision, and then integration is like the quote unquote seventh.
This is so funny because I have the same chart, but 5 very different words.
What?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I must not have that exact one, but it's funny that it's a wave
The
because
same
that's what it
thing.
is. There's going to be
Yep.
highs and lows of the unknown. So
Yep.
you explain yours and then I'll explain mine.
That was kind of all, but I thought that was kind of where I started with my notes, and I was like, okay, like I know these things because we've all been through change, and it was like, okay, denial, yes, like this makes sense, frustration, the depression, which I think like my biggest change recently was obviously moving here. That is the number one thing I come to, but I think there's been so much change over the past couple of years, but that's been the big one. So I'm like, okay, I remember that depression point where it was like right before moving, it was like, oh my God, am I really doing this? Like I'm gonna leave friends and family. I'm gonna like I remember hitting it, and then you experiment, you begin the change. It's like, okay, this isn't so bad. Let's find the positives in this new thing that we're doing instead of focusing on the negatives. And I'll go in, I think we can go into that more in a little bit. And then you decide, you're like, this is the change that's happening. Like, I'm going to commit that this is where I'm at. And then the integration, and you make it happen. So I was like, okay, I see it, but I was like, I can also kind of, and I think anybody listening can also think about a change, whether it be like literally, we could use this same example with your week. You know, like it can be used big change, little change, anywhere in between. And it just kind of helps to see like what I'm feeling and what I'm going through is normal because change on any scale is change. And like we're human beings, we do not like change. Like it's not what any of us want, but the best things occur when we are most uncomfortable. And I think that's like something I talked about on my little solo episode I did too, but like you will never grow if like you need to change to grow. So like get yourself uncomfortable, remember that it's actually a good thing if you feel uncomfortable and let the change happen. So big tangent,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I love the curve.
One of the quotes that I saw when I was doing this research is change is inevitable. The best way to control the uncontrollable is to manage it, which is essentially what you're saying is find different
Yes.
ways to, cope with it. And when you were talking about your wavelengths, it reminded me of the chronic pain cycle.
Yes.
Brief sidebar, if you guys don't know, I have complex regional pain syndrome in my right ankle. We did 2 years of experiments, like terrible, terrible pain. Sky witnessed this firsthand. Um, and
Side
I
note
remember
on that. This is such a tangent. How has that been with your pregnancy?
it was, I have not had any issues until Sunday. Chris was not home for the weekend, and we have cameras. We have like a security system, and my foot was throbbing. And I was like, the only thing I can do right now, because I can't take ibuprofen, I can't do any of my usual pain management things. I was like, the only thing I have here is a boot. So I put on my air boot, and I was like, if this helps, then I know that it's this.
Yeah.
That's the issue. So I put my boot on, and I was laying on the couch and I had my foot up, and he just happened to, he was trying to find me and he couldn't find me on the camera. So he turned on the living room camera and he was like, "What are you
Oh
wearing?"
no.
I didn't even want him to know, but that's just where I happened to land. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, my boot on." But it was really only like a 2 day stretch that it
Okay.
was really bothering me. It will be very interesting to see what happens after I have her, whether or not
Yes.
I have issues or not.
The reason for people listening, the reason I bring this up is because I remember your doctor saying that pregnancy might actually permanently fix your injury,
Yes.
which I remember at the time we were like, this is insane. How cool would that be? But anyways, back to your point with the pain
So
curve.
the pain cycle, I had never heard of this. I was sitting in, finally, like 2 years into this journey, I'm sitting in a doctor's office who's a specialist in this. And I think they had diagnosed it at this point. And there's like a poster on the wall and it said chronic pain cycle. And it's like pain, anxiety, brain focuses on the pain more. You take it out on your loved ones, depression, withdrawnness, and it goes in a circle. And I took a picture of it, I sent it to Chris, and he was like, this literally explains you and your moods in the last 2 years. He's like, I don't mean to be mean. He was like, but this literally describes the cycle you have been in. And that was just like, being able to see it and say like, okay, this makes sense. Like, I'm not crazy. This is actually what's going on is huge, especially when you don't have answers. Cause that was a change that abruptly changed my life. And then we didn't have answers and we rode that little circle for 2 years until we had, the right doctors and stuff.
Yep.
Um, but it just, that reminded me of that.
And it's you weren't feeling guilt for maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like I think with change sometimes just to try and connect this here, like I, if you're going through a change, like let's say you're moving to a city away from your friends and family for a new job. And you're like, I'm so excited about this job, but you feel so much guilt because you're leaving your friends and family, and you're like, I shouldn't be doing this. I need to take care of my love, whatever it may be. You're feeling that guilt. It's nice to know that what you're going through, this whole pain, not pain, the change curve that we talked about, it's normal to be feeling these guilt, depression, frustration, all these different things in the process of change. And in your example too, like you weren't feeling guilt necessarily, you were feeling all these aspects of pain, but you looked at this chart and you're like, I don't feel alone anymore. Like it's nice to know that I'm not going crazy. What I'm going through, what I'm feeling is normal. And I think the same can be said for change. Like it's nice to see these things or to talk to people, to listen to people like people are doing right now with this. Like change is inevitable and it's okay to feel not happy about it all the time. Like, yes, you're very happy about having a baby, but I'm sure there are those moments where you're like, this change is so freaking scary because you have nothing to relate it to. Same with moving here is like, what am I getting myself into? Like, it's terrifying and it's okay to admit that. And it's nice to know that you're not alone, which I think is exactly what you were saying with the pain, too.
Absolutely. So my change
Mhm.
wave is define. So define the problem, define an ideal solution, and understand the scope. So that's like the
Hmm.
first three things you do, which I
Yep.
think, especially with change, I feel like it's so easy to get wrapped up in the change itself that we don't even think about what we want the ideal solution to be. I know that that's something that I don't do. And I think that that's where I spiral. So that's why like yesterday was a perfect example. I had already done my prep for this podcast. I knew that I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like myself. And I was like, what solution do I need tonight? And I was like, I literally just want to cry. Like I literally want to take a shower and cry. So that is what I did. And it was a small scale solution, but it worked. And it really, you just have to apply them. And that was a little bit of adaptive change there
Yeah,
that we made.
for sure. I think it's
But
interesting just to go, just another
yeah.
example, or not example, but just to kind of dive into that a little bit too, is change is something we can't control. Whether we are signing up for the new job, obviously you wanted to have a baby. So, like, yes, in a way, I signed up to move here, like, whatever. Change, we expected, we asked for these changes, but change is something that we don't want in like our scientific brain. Like, humans don't want change. So, we can't control it. Like it's going to happen, whatever the scope of it is. So if you focus on the pieces of it that you can control, I feel like it takes the scariness out of the change because instead of feeling like, oh my God, I have no control over anything, my anxiety is at an all time high, I can't do anything, like blah, blah, blah. You're like, nope. What I can focus on is how I'm going to make myself feel better in this perfect moment, which for you was shower and cry. That sometimes is all you need. It's like take it one step at a time. This change is huge and it's scary, whatever it is. Break it down and focus on only what you can control. Change is inevitable. There's no reason to waste your energy on things that are going to happen or maybe not happen. Like sometimes I feel like we stress about change that might not even happen. What a waste of energy. So instead, focus on only what you can actually control.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Keep going with your curve.
My next step is analysis. So, who is involved? Align the expectations, analyze your perspective, and understand the cost. So,
Mm.
that was like, oh, that is also huge because the biggest part of miscommunications is when you are not aligned with whoever you are talking to, even if it's yourself. But like if you have different expectations or if your perspective is skewed from maybe not being necessarily as unbiased, like that's going to change your reactions and how the whole situation is going to play out. So I feel like that was also another one that was just nice to just see it spelt out. It was like, oh, yep, I can take 3 minutes and really see like, okay, what's my role in this?
Yeah.
What is whoever it's another person that you're having an issue with, like what is their role in it? and then just really understanding the situation as a whole. I think that's kind of more of like taking a step back and looking at it as a big picture.
Yes. Yeah, I like that because when you started going through that example or that part of the
Yeah.
curve, it made me think of our anxiety management tracker that we put together. And we talk a lot on here about different anxiety strategies for like relieving anxiety. And the number one that comes to mind is like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, like that one when you go down the line. And it almost seems like in your example, you're doing the same thing with change. And I think change and anxiety can be the same, interchange. And I think they're very connected. And with anxiety, you're trying to focus on the things you can focus on and kind of break it down. And with this part of the change curve, you're doing the same thing. You're breaking it down. Okay, what does this actually mean? Like it's all very connected.
Absolutely. And I think the other part too is fear is going to fear is a emotion that's driven by not having knowledge.
Hmm.
These steps are forcing you to create like a knowledge base on the change at hand. And I think that that immediately is going to alleviate fear, which is going to alleviate anxiety because those two walk hand in hand.
Yep,
Uh,
I love that.
Third step is plan. So make steps to help with the change, communication, and then process modeling, which I never even thought of this. Of course, this is like in business terms, but you can model what that change is going to look like. And I think that that's something like, let's take pregnancy, for instance. Like, I don't have a baby yet, but we just got her nursery completely ready. And that's like modeling what's going to happen. Like, when we have change, like, I did baby laundry the other day.
Mhm.
That's not like, it's not going to be as overwhelming when she's here and I have to do a little laundry because it's not the first time I've done
Yep. Yeah, so it's almost like preparing and like
it.
modeling, preparing. Like I think it would be a little bit ridiculous if you and Chris spent like tomorrow pretending like your baby was here and it was like, oh, I need
Right.
to feed her. Like we're not going to do
Right.
that. But you can practice and you can prepare so that when the time comes, it's not the first time you're doing these things,
Right.
which I mean, some of these things you do automatically. Like if you're packing, if you're moving, you're going to pack, you're going to sell your whatever, like you are going to do some of these steps. But I think the mental preparation as well as the physical can really set you up for success in these inevitable changes that you can't control. Kind of the same sort of
Yeah.
thing, like focus on what you can control. And for you, it's like, let me get this laundry down so that when she's crying or she's whatever, that's one less thing I have to worry about.
Yeah. And like, think about if you had, let's say you had a presentation at work and it was the first time you're taking point. You're going to
Yeah,
practice the speech. Like, that is a change, whether like you acknowledge it or not, but like taking lead on something or being in a meeting and presenting, that's huge. And
yeah,
you're naturally gonna practice, whether it's in your head on your drive in or you actually do like a mock version of it, like that's modeling.
absolutely. And I think I love what you said about fear. And I didn't even write this down. I thought I had, but like you have to feel the fear and you have to do it anyways. And I know we've talked about confidence, and I think confidence is something that isn't necessary for change because, like we've said, change is going to happen whether we want it to or not. But I think if you can even just fake the confidence going into something, the fear, I think confidence trumps fear in so many situations, whether you actually have the confidence or you're faking the confidence. It's like you walk into that meeting, you might be petrified on the inside, but if you're like shoulders back, smiling, you're acting like you own this, everyone's gonna automatically, your mindset's gonna change because everyone that you're presenting to is like, she knows what she's talking about. And the whole attitude changes. The fear goes away because you don't have to worry about it. You've already like set yourself up. You've set your mindset like I am confident, I got this. I think with pregnancy, it can be the same sort of thing. Like you're setting yourself up so that you're like I am going to make sure I can be as confident as possible with all these things that I can control. You like going back to the presentation, you know your speech, you know your slides. Like set yourself up so that you can be as confident as possible going into these things that you then can't control.
Absolutely. Next part is execute. So now you're going to measure and report on the change, and you'll have your tools. So I mean, I feel like every single one of these steps beforehand is technically a tool,
Mhm.
but if you're in the middle of a huge change and you actually need tools to get yourself through it, I think that this is kind of where that is. This is where the change is really happening. So if you're
Yep.
moving, this is like the day you're actually taking all of your stuff and moving to your new house, or this is the day you have your baby. Like that's that sort of thing. So that's the peak of it.
Yep.
And then the last one is reinforce. So KPIs, which is key performance indicators, and then rectify the pain points and address fears, and then tweak plans and processes. Because everything, you're always tweaking it. That's the whole dream life floating. Like you can be living your dream life, but you're always going to be evolving and working harder towards the next thing.
Yep.
And just tracking like your success, your progress, what is working, what isn't working, and then adjusting again, and then that's going to create more change.
Yep.
It's a never-ending cycle.
It is, and I think that's the hard part is like, and I think that's kind of the phase of life we're in right now is obviously like nothing is permanent, especially in the hockey world. And it's like we could have to pack up and go at literally any point at any point in time. Like that's just the way it is. And I think moving here, that was something that gave me a lot of anxiety. It was like, well, I don't want to get too comfortable because I might have, or like at some point, all this stuff's going to have to go in a suitcase and I'm going to have to go back home, Like, so it's hard. That's my example, but like in any situation, you can never, like, something's always going to change. And I think you have to learn the balance. And I think I've really had to learn that in a like smaller sense of like, you have to be comfortable right now and be okay that like things are going to change. Just enjoy it right now. And I think that's the anxiety part of it for me is I look very much too into the future. It's like, well, like I shouldn't do this because 5 years from now this might not make sense. And it's like, okay, well, for some really big decisions, obviously looking big does make sense, but for day to day, all you can do, especially if you're in like that crisis moment of change, don't drive yourself crazy trying to think what's going to work in 5 years from now. Just get through that moment right now. It's like, okay, get through today. Perfect example is what you did the other day. Like I have to take my shower and I have to cry right now. I don't care if I should be doing this or this would help me more or like whatever. Just get yourself through the moment and like keep going from there. And like it's inevitable. Things are always going to cycle and you're going to have to go through more change, but if you can like get yourself through each moment, then you're setting yourself up for success when the next inevitable change comes.
Yeah, I mean, everything is temporary.
I
And
know.
that's like makes you want to savor it. And then the crappy stuff, it's like, well, it's temporary. It's not going to
Yep.
last forever.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. Is like for better or for worse, everything is temporary. So if you're in a situation of change that you're feeling absolutely miserable, it's like this is temporary. But then I think the flip side is if you're in a situation that's really good and you're spending way too much time thinking about, oh my God, well, this is going to be over one day and it's not always going to be this awesome. Like,
Mhm.
why are you thinking like that? Like yes. So stop worrying about what's inevitable. Like that's going to happen anyways. Don't spend any time focusing on it. Just enjoy it for right now. And I think that was like when I was home last summer, before I moved, even like all these, like the end of the season, all these different things. Like I'm sure you and Chris right now are going through it too. Like these are the last moments where it's going to be just the two of you, like all these
Yep.
different things. It's like you have to enjoy the moment right now because it is never gonna be like things are going to change. So it's with change. It's so like change is icky. It's something that's always I've always had a hard time with because it's
Yep.
just uncomfortable.
It's super uncomfortable, but that's where you grow.
Yep. And it's funny, like I remember like going to college and I went to college 5 minutes down the road and I
Mhm.
cried and cried and cried. I was like, I cannot imagine not waking up with my family every day and having dinner with my family and like being with my friends and like driving to the beach with, like all these things. I was like, I cannot imagine this changing. And it's
Yep.
crazy how like look at me now, like it's just you think you can't do it and then you prove yourself wrong. And I think that's like the mantra with change is like, if you think you can't, prove yourself wrong. Like, yes, you can.
And then you're going to have confidence going into the next season of change because
Yep.
you did it once or twice or 100 times, and now you're going to just do it again.
Yep. I feel like, how people are addicted, or some people are addicted to adrenaline, and they're like, I want like the adrenaline junkie. I feel like I am not there, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I feel like it would be a really cool goal to become addicted to change. Like you're looking forward to like bring it on universe. Like I am so protected. I got myself covered so much that like bring it on, I can handle it and just see like I feel like maybe that's the outlook is like embrace change. Like, bring it on instead of fearing it. We know it's going to come anyways. So instead of fearing the inevitable, embrace it. Like, fine, bring it on. I know I can handle it. And that mantra, that'll keep you going.
Oh, for sure. And I think you're going to be more open if you adopt that mantra. You're going to be more open to new opportunities, anyways, or you're going to be bold enough to create and ask for new opportunities. Just,
Yes.
you know, giving the fear the least amount of power is going to give you freedom.
Yep.
Do we want to do favorites?
Yes. I was like, I have so many more things we can say on this, but I kind of love how that wrapped up, and I think we should just leave it at that.
I agree.
You go first.
Well, my quote was everything is temporary, but
It's a good quote.
it fit in there.
Yep.
So,
My quote, completely unrelated, but I was scouring Pinterest as we do, and this popped up, and I was actually never even able to find like the actual pin for it because it was, in Pinterest sometimes you see like it comes up like horizontally like in the middle of your feed and it'll say like pin boards based on your scrolling. So that it was the title image of one of these, and I could never find it because I wanted to save it and use it, but I couldn't find it. So what I think it was, because I lost it immediately, was owning my power inspires others to do the same. I am not afraid to shine.
oh,
And I was like, wow, because I think so often we get so concerned like if I like shine, if I am going to tell somebody that I did something great at work today or did something that I'm proud of or whatever it is, like something good that happened in your life, you're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to make somebody else feel bad, so I'm not going to do that." Like, no, I love this perspective where if I come to you and I'm like, which actually we do this all the time. If I come to you and I'm like, "This happened, like I'm so proud of myself," and then you're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. I did this." And it's like we can bounce off each other because there is no, it's not like me shining means you can't shine. Like we can both shine and it's going to even make both of us shine brighter and it's going to inspire us and others to continue shining and shine brighter and like spread that shine. So I loved the quote and what it stands for.
yeah, I really like that.
What was your favorite?
So I have a couple favorites for this week. But my first is I'm back on my folklore trend. I don't know what it is. Every summer, like it's usually June, I have to listen to that album on repeat. Like I cannot listen to anything else. I
What?
think I can just hear, like I can visualize like summer scenes going through my head as I listen to it, and it's literally like it's like crack to me. I can't not listen to it. But I did make myself a playlist with all of my favorite Taylor songs with folklore sprinkled in because I was like, Chris is gonna kill me. Like the man can't listen to this one more time. So it's it's a sprinkled playlist, but it all has like the same calm vibes. And honestly,
Yep.
I think it's gonna end up being the baby's playlist more so than mine.
Yes.
But that's what I've been listening to, and it's just been, giving me all those summer feels. But I think it's also paired with the summer readings that I've been doing.
Yes. Yes.
So I just read the Summer of Broken Rules or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It had a pink cover, but that was all Taylor inspired. Like if you read between the lines, like you could pick up the songs that they were referencing. So good. And then I just read Part of Your World, which felt very summery and fun.
Abby Jimenez, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Jimenez. I think that's how you pronounce it. She is definitely our new summer author. I am obsessed.
There's so
It's
many books.
so many books. It feels a little too early to dive into Ellen or Elin Hilderbrand.
Mhm.
I feel like we're not quite at that point of summer yet, but Abby, she's perfect. Her books are like a warm hug. I've read two now. You're gonna be so obsessed with the second. The first, like, I want to get into more than like just this part of your world series that we've been diving into, but no, Abby, she's a good one.
She's our summer author for 2024.
Yes.
Love
It's so funny that Folklore is a summer album for you because it screams. I don't know where Folklore fits in for me because I feel like Red is the fall album
yeah.
and Folklore feels like a fall
Evermore
album
feels
for
like
me.
fall too to me.
Yes. And I
I
know
think
August, obviously, that's a summer song, but the rest of Folklore, like Cardigan, like a lot of those songs feel more fall to me. So it's so interesting to hear like different people's
that's so funny because
perspectives.
The One feels
Yes.
Cardigan feels summer because that's like my actual like cardigan from that album is what I wear boating.
Oh,
And then the last Great American Dynasty, that is summer. That is summer party
that's
and
true.
alignment.
That's
And
true.
then Seven, she's like, it's summertime. They're going to the lake. The lakes is obviously the lakes. And
I
then
think
August is toward, I think it's the eighth or ninth track. So that feels like the end of summer because it's at the end of the album.
I feel like I need to listen to it now that we're heading into summer, and I might look at it in because I think you're onto something. It's clear that it's more of a summer album than I ever thought it was. That's very interesting.
The cover is deceiving because the cover
Yes.
does give fall.
Yep.
But if
Yeah,
it wasn't in black and white, all of those trees would be green.
it's true. I
That
like this, but it's so fun. I love like music and things like that. Like everybody thinks about things so differently. Like we all like have especially with Taylor songs. Like what I think about one song might be you might have a completely different interpretation, and like so I love it. So I'm gonna take your advice and dive into folklore.
yeah. Listen to it outside with a spritz.
Yes, with a spritz and my birds.
Yeah. What is your
Um,
favorite?
kind of. I had two because the first one was my hair, which it's been a full week now, and I have to say, I loved it so, so, so much when I got it cut. And then the first time I washed it, I was like, oh my God, I do not know how to style this hair. So I feel like we're learning and it's a work in progress. But like the first time I washed it, I was like, oh my God, I hate this. Like I just had to figure it out. And Nick was like, it looks good. And I was like, no, like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I don't want to look like Lord Farquaad. And I feel like that's
I don't think you get those vibes
no
at
one
all.
no one thinks it except for me, and I don't anymore. I feel like I'm getting there, and I'm using my like heated roller brush again. That's like really helpful for like just making like I don't know. We're getting there. But now the second wash we did a lot better. So my hair was my first one because I am despite our I had to go through a little bit of change depression. I think that it's actually a very good example, but we're back to liking it. But my real favorite is like summer nostalgia as a whole. So I think it's funny that you were talking about summer books. We've been rewatching old Disney movies, like the original Lion King. We watched. We have a ton on our list. We watched Cheaper by the Dozen. So just something about summer to me is like very nostalgic. So watching all those old summery, specifically Disney movies, like just gets you in a good like nostalgic vibe. So I'm very excited for like those vibes again, which I feel like you're doing the same thing with folklore. So it's so funny.
Absolutely. Well, what a good way to wrap up. You guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, leave a review wherever you are listening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening.